Hello everyone, welcome back to Good Stuff Coding. In the previous videos, we've covered a lot of ground in our Spring Boot journey. We've built controllers, created JPA entities, and implemented repositories for data access. If you missed those, make sure to catch up. Link in the description below. In today's video, we are taking the next step in our Spring Boot adventure by adding business logic to our applications. We will introduce the concept of service layers, explain dependency injection, and demonstrate how to inject repositories into services and services into controllers. By the end of this video, you will be able to build future-rich Spring Boot applications. So let's get started. To add business logic to our Spring Boot applications, we will begin by introducing the concept of a service layer. The service layer is an essential component in modern software development. It acts as a bridge between our API layer, the controllers, and data access layer, the repositories. Its primary role is to house our business logic, separating it from the controller layer. This separation keeps our code clean, maintainable, and organized. Let's dive into some code. We will create a service class, which is a Java class responsible for implementing our business logic. In this class, we can define methods that perform specific tasks related to our application's functionality. By placing our business logic in the service layer, we ensure that our controllers remain lightweight and focused on handling HTTP requests and responses. So first, we will need to use our repository in our service layer, in our service class. Also, to let Spring Boot know that our class is a service class, we add the annotation @service. So now, let's get our repository. So we type private final book repository and give it a name book repository. Next, let's add this to a constructor. Now, our first service class method is to get the book stored. So, public list returns a book, then get books. Now inside the body, return book repository.find all. Now that we have our service class, let's see how we can use it in our controller. Now, when it comes to using our service layer in our controllers, we need to talk about dependency injection. Now, dependency injection is a design pattern used to achieve loose coupling between components in a software system. We can easily inject our service classes into our controller using the @AutoWired annotation. In Spring development, more specific Spring 6, there are two major types of dependency injection, as seen on this page. Link in the description below. They are constructor-based and setter-based dependency injection. The constructor-based dependency injection is accomplished by the container invoking a constructor with a number of arguments, each representing a dependency. The setter-based dependency injection is accomplished by the container calling setter methods on your beans after invoking a non-argument constructor. We can use the @AutoWired annotation on a setter method to make the property be a required dependency. We will be using the constructor-based dependency injection because that is the recommended way of injecting dependencies. So, by creating a constructor, Spring Boot takes care of providing an instance of our service when the controller is created. This makes it incredibly convenient to access and use our service methods with our controllers. Let's first add our service class. So private final book service. Now let's create the constructor. Let's get to it. Let's remove these lines of code. Now, we already have our logic to get all books from the database. So let's define our HTTP method to get it. And public list returns a book and gets all books. But in the return statement, book service.get books. Now, since we are retrieving information, we use the get method. So let's annotate it as get mapping annotation. Now let's run the application and then test this. We will do our testing in the IDE. Note, I am using the ultimate version of IntelliJ. You might not have this functionality in the community version or any other IDE, but don't worry, we'll use another tool called Postman to test it in the next video. So, in our controller, you can see this symbol. We click on it and it opens our testing environment. As you can see, it got the URL we are going to use to get the data. Now, all that is left is to click this play button and our request is sent. And a response is returned. So this is our result, an empty list. This is because we've not added any data into the database yet. So let's continue. Now let's write our logic to add a book to our database. So in our service class, we type the following: public void add books, and it takes a book request. Okay, let's create our book request class. Now, instead of a class, let's make it a record. Record was introduced in Java version, and it simplifies a class creation in that it removes most of the boilerplate code. No need for defining constructors, getters, setters, etc. So let's create it. You right click on the book package, go to new, and then Java class. In the pop-up, we select record. Then we enter the name book request. Now let's define the properties or fields of the record. And this time, unlike the class, these fields will be defined as parameters. So in the parentheses, we type, mind you, we need only the title, author, and then the price from the book entity. So string title, string author, and then double price, and that's all. Back to our service class. We continue by creating a new book instance. Book. We then set the fields of our book instance by passing the book request fields as arguments. So book.setTitle and book request.title, book.setAuthor and book request.author, book.setPrice, book request.price. Then finally, let's save the book object. So book repository.save and book. There we go. Now to write the controller or HTTP method to call this service. So in our controller class, we create a method and name it save books. So public void save books. It then takes the book request as parameter. So book request, book request. Then inside, we call the add books method from the service class. So book service dot add books book request. We will use two annotations here. The first one is at post mapping with the path /add. The second one is at request body. So before the book request parameter, we type at request body. This gets the body of the book request object. And that's all. Now let's test it out. Okay. Before we test it out, I just remembered that we have set up our project to always destroy and create our table at runtime. This is what I'm talking about. In our properties.application file, we set spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl auto to create. Let's change it to update. This makes sure that our data is still available if we rerun the application. Okay, now let's run the application. So in our testing environment, let's run this API request, and we still have an empty list. Okay, now go back to our controller class, then click on the symbol near there at post mapping. Now we need to enter our request in JSON format. So let's enter a few. So we title the name of the book, Java how to program, comma, and after data, comma, and price, say 35. Now click on the play button and returns a status code of 200, which means it worked, but we can still find out. So click the play button near the get request, and now as you can see, the request we sent was saved. How easy is that? Let's go ahead and add two more. Okay, now let's add one more. Alright, so let's run our get API request again. And okay, as you can see, we have all the data saved. Nice and easy. If you enjoyed so far, please make it a point to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification icon. Okay, let's keep on going. Now let's get the books by ID. So in our service class, we type public book get book ID, public book get book by ID. It takes the parameter long ID, and then returns book repository dot find by ID. Then pass the parameter ID dot get. Now in the controller class, let's write public book get book, then long book ID. Then it returns book service dot get book by ID, then the bracket book ID. Let's annotate it with at get mapping, then the path /ID. Let's also add another annotation here at path variable. It takes ID. Now the at path variable annotation allows us to map the book ID parameter with the ID in the get mapping path. Let's write the logic to delete a book as well. So in the service class, we type public void remove book, then the parameter long book ID, and repository dot delete by ID and book ID. Now in the controller class, let's add the delete book method. So public void delete book, then long book ID, then book service dot remove book, and bracket ID book ID. Let's annotate it with at delete mapping then /ID. Let's also add the at path variable ID annotation. Now let's test them. So we run the application. Now we click the icon near the get book method. Then we change the ID to 2. We run and we get data with ID 2. Let's try with 4. We run and we get the data with ID 4. Now let's test the delete method. Let the delete ID with 3. We run. Okay, now let's run the get all books method again. And as you can see, the data with ID 3 was deleted. Now let's write the logic for the update book details method. I'll write this and then I'll come back to explain. Now, so update book details, it takes the book ID parameter and then the book request also as a parameter. Then we define a book and then we set it to the repository .find by ID and the book ID .get. Now we make some checks. So if the book request title is not null and it's also not blank, then we can set the book title to the request of the title. The title of the request. Also, if the author also is the same. Also, if the author is not null and it's not blank, it's not equal to blank, then we also set the author by the request. Then when it comes to the price, which is a double, we check to see if the price we got from the request is not equal to 00. If it's not equal to 00, then we set the price to the book request. Then we return the book request.save and it saves the book we defined. Now the controller method, we type the public book update book. Then it takes a long ID with annotation at path variable and ID, comma, and then we get the book request to. It also takes annotation at request body. And we return book service.update book details. Pass in the book ID and then the book request. Now let's annotate it with @put mapping with path/id. Now let's run the application and then test this method. We change the ID to 2. Then let's send a JSON data. This time we will only specify the title. Then we set it to cracking the coding interview. Run it and we see our data has been updated. Previously it was cracking the interview and we've updated it to cracking the coding interview. Now you can specify any of the fields or all of the fields at the same time. It still works. Okay. So in this section of the video, we've learned about the service layer and the concept of dependency injection. This architecture keeps our code clean, organized, and maintainable as we add business logic to our Spring Boot applications. So if you found this information helpful, give us a thumbs up, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter in this Spring Boot tutorial series, where we will explore our use of Postman for API testing. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.